So, back again. I'm going to continue my series of underrated thrillers slash horror films that have been remastered in lavish editions by REVUE. The second one I'm playing right now. The theme song is incredible. That's my favorite Morricone work. Yeah, it's very beautiful and elegiac and evocative. So this is the Arrow edition of the Cat O' Tales. It took me seeing this about 20 times to realize this character down here. I just wasn't registering it. I was just seeing a cat. Beautiful painting. So here's the back. And it's got a reversible cover. So if you want to, you can do Il Gatto a Nove Code. And I butchered that one. But that's the original Italian title, which translates as the Cat O' Nine Tails. This is by Dario Argento. He's kind of a lightning rod of controversy in the horror community, and sometimes, and I think he likes that. He can be kind of a provocateur, I guess. If it's not something that he's done, it's something related to him, like the Suspiria remake, something he's reacting to. One thing that he reacted to very strongly in an interview on the old Anchor Bay DVD of Cat O' Nine Tails, was the film itself. He didn't like it. He thought it's his worst movie, and too commercial. Sorry about the shaking there. We're getting shaky here. And yeah. Now on the interviews, the modern interviews on this Blu-ray, he's a bit more charitable. He can't really come out and say, "Yeah, I like it," because obviously he doesn't. But you know, he's not slamming it. So we've gotten that far with Dario, or maybe he's just kind of mellowed a bit with age. For the record, a lot of people hate this movie. It's not popular in Argento circles generally. They usually consider it one of his worst films also, which I think is absurd if you look at some of the films he's made in the last 30 some years. Wow. Saying this 1971 film, his second feature film ever, is among, if not his worst. I don't know. That's pushing it into some kind of absurdist stratosphere that I can't quite grapple with mentally. First of all, it's extremely well made. Yes, it may seem commercial to Argento and to some of his fans, but The Bird's Crystal Plumage was commercial, and it made a lot of money. Even in the United States, it was well known. I mean, you wouldn't know by the 1990s when I got into Suspiria and Tenebrae and stuff, but he was, kind of obscure then to a lot of American people outside of hardcore horror fans. But I mean, I don't know if he was well known by name in 1970, 71, but Bird of the Crystal Plumage was certainly a known film and, somewhat of a hit thriller. I don't know if it's the kind of movie my parents would have gone to see. I mean, my parents, especially my dad, liked Hitchcock. He saw Psycho in the theater first run, but I don't know what they would have thought of this movie. My mom loved mysteries. She probably would like Cat O' Nine Tails. My parents were Carl Malden fans. They liked all those old guard of Hollywood stars who were just an incredible generation. I mean, I'm not dismissing them. I'm actually praising them. And he was always been one of my favorites. The underrated James Franciscus co-stars, and he usually played the stolid, hunky kind of hero guy. He's perfectly cast in this as a foil for Malden, who's like the aging, blind former reporter, and Franciscus is our young, studly reporter. They're both trying to unravel some murder mysteries, a murder mystery about several murders that take place in various parts of the city, and one on a subway. And some of them are kind of gruesome. But the murders themselves, the murder set pieces, so to speak, uh, are not, they're almost secondary really to the story and to the characters, and the mood of the film. The mood of the film is perfect with the captured with the music throughout. It goes from really dissonant and avant-garde kind of abstract stuff like Morricone did in portions of Birth of Crystal Plumage, and later in Four Flies on Grey Velvet. But um, it also, like I said, has some incredible, beautiful, touching melodies, which fit the character dynamics. I didn't mention the other major character. Well, there's two more major characters, other than a variety of nefarious types and red herrings and MacGuffins scattered throughout. But um, the other major character, the third major character, is played by Cynthia De Carolis, and she was a child actor at this time, and I don't really know or remember, I guess you could say, a whole lot about how she got into that. There is information about her on this Blu-ray. There's information about everything you want to know on this Blu-ray, um, and I love it because it's one of my favorite films. Cynthia plays this little girl who calls Carl Malden Cookie, and because he's sweet, and the innocent days, and I don't know, maybe she's like 10 years old. She's an orphan, and he's a blind guy who's just kind of, well, as he puts it, we're both alone in the world, and we find we need each other. So, wow, that gets me every time. So I've got to say, that's one of the reasons I love this movie so much, is that the characterizations are of the three prime characters are very human, much more human and humane, humanitarian than the leads in most of Argento's films, especially the more recent films, where to me all the characters are ciphers. I can't really think of any character in any film he's made in 25 years that has the feeling of any kind of connection. Now, Anna in Stendhal Syndrome, played by Asia, his daughter, that's probably the closest. But that's also, in my opinion, the last movie he did that was worthwhile. That's just my opinion, and I've gone over it and over it. I had a buddy who swore by Argento and probably still does, and he explained to me many times his defense of the films Argento made from opera onwards, and so I tried more than once, and I've watched them all, and I've got to say, really after Phenomena, the only Argento film that I like is Stendhal Syndrome. I'm not even really a fan of opera, even though I get it has some very elaborate diabolical set pieces as well, and they're well done. But to me, it was the beginning of the end for him. It wasn't the end of the beginning. It was the beginning of the, as Sad Black Sabbath would say, but it was the beginning of the end. And really, his installment in Two Evil Eyes was pretty good compared to Romero's, which was just utterly forgettable. They're two Edgar Allan Poe stories they adapted together like a two director omnibus film. Argento, in that case, had Harvey Keitel and John Amos, two killer actors, but he didn't really give them a lot to do, a lot of material. But it was good that he cast them, and I thought that was his concession to being commercial at that time. To be honest, if he'd gone in that direction, I think his movies would have been of a higher quality. Not because they were commercial, but just because they had, a little higher, not production values, but they should make up a term for the inner qualities that you get out of a movie. with a low budget, not just like The Outer, like, we shoot in this place that looks incredible, so that's great production values. We've done it cheaply, and we made the movie look really good. Um, but casting people like Keitel and Amos, that's like the actor version of a production value. It's like, oh, we've got them in this movie. That alone elevates this film to a certain level. Not that actors have ever been his thing, and so I've come full circle. I hope in that rambling monologue there by trying to explain that Cat of Nine Tails is also, quality leads and characters, and this is just not Argento's forte. And I mean, he's a good writer, but was a good writer in any case. He was a good writer before he did Bird the Crystal Plumage. He was a critic, and he wrote or co-wrote some really good spaghetti westerns like Today We Kill, Tomorrow We Die, and I believe he worked on I want to say he worked on Cemetery Without Crosses, but I may be getting my brain mixed up there. And of course, he worked on the script for Once Upon a Time in the West, which kind of what really put him on the map. But Bird, of course, was his directorial debut. And he wrote or co-wrote most of the early films of his. And then later, he had kind of a middle period where he was really popular among horror fans and got amped up the gore, amped up the eye candy. And you have films like Suspiria, Deep Red, these aren't in order, Deep Red, Suspiria, Inferno, Tenebrae, and all classics in their own right, but a lot of those had a lot of script input from his then wife, Daria Nicolodi, who was Asia's mother. I believe she actually was born the same year that Deep Red was released. So, yeah, I think this is the problem, is that there's a disconnect with Argento as far as how he views scripts and cinema. And see, I don't have any conventional rules that I adhere to as far as being a viewer or a critic or whatever about these things. I think everything you kind of meet a work of art at least halfway. You meet it on its own level and decide if it rises or falls on those merits. And some do and some do not, and some do for some people and some do not for others. And these are beyond obvious comments, but ones that sometimes need to be reiterated because people get lost in this kind of hero worship of their favorite artists, and I'm probably no exception. In my opinion, David Lynch could do no wrong, but I'm not going to say that Dune is to me a great movie, because to me Dune is not a great movie. It's a great looking movie. It has some great actors. But it's weak in a lot of ways, and I feel you can tell that Lynch's heart was not in it. Is it better than a lot of the science fiction films of that era? Well, I don't know. The Thing by Carpenter, Blade Runner? No, it's really not. Is it as bad as some of the worst ones, like Saturn III, which is still a fun movie, but definitely, starting to hit the dregs there. And for Hollywood, big budget sci-fi, no, of course not. Dune's much better than Saturn III. Is it better than Return of the Jedi? Yeah, definitely, in my opinion. I think Lynch was briefly considered to direct a Star Wars film. But my point is that Argento is not God, and his own word on his films is his own word, and the artist's perception is always going to be at variance, not always, but usually, if not often, at variance with that of the viewer, the consumer of the art, the audience. So sometimes you must take what the artist says with a grain of salt. Other times, I would say absolutely he knows himself better than anyone else. But I think people go through phases in their life and they re-evaluate and they reassess their own works and the works of others over the years. And, you know, that's just a human thing. We're in a continuum. We're not in stasis here. I mean, one can hope we're not in stasis anyway. That's a septic, dangerous way to be. But I think having a free, open mind and progressing is really the way to go, especially if you are in the arts or interested in the arts, and that is your solace, your refuge, your credo, as it is mine. Um, so what the fuck is Cat o' Nine Tails about? Well, like I said, there's a bunch of murders, of course, a black gloved killer, etc., which is probably Argento wearing the gloves as he usually does. But it involves this thing called the Terzi Institute, where you kind of have this sort of pseudo sci-fi kind of premise that the XYY super rare XYY chromosome, maybe not super rare, but undetermined by science prior to this, XYY chromosome is responsible for a tendency towards aggression and violent crime. So that's the premise, and the fact is somebody is killing people associated with this and doesn't want people to know something about this project. And Terzi himself is kind of a controversial figure, the scientist, and he is even more dubious because we learn that he has had sexual attraction to his adopted daughter and possibly even sexual relations with her, played by the fourth and final major actor, Catherine Spock, who's Francisca's love interest basically, and she's like the glamorous, diva of the movie, but she does figure into the plot in a strong fashion in the sense that not only does there goes that subway murder, and not only does she she's kind of a red herring about the killer, and she does have that revelation about her and her father. But also, when Franciscus meets her, and a couple of times that he hangs out with her, she also kind of dishes up the gossip, so to speak, with him, and serves as an exposition character for him about inner workings of things with the Terzi Institute that she knows about. And unfortunately, he starts to suspect that she's the killer. And with Argento, you never know. I mean, after the Birth of Crystal Plumage revealed, she could well be the killer, but I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it. She's not the killer. But by that time, their relationship's screwed, no pun intended. And, it's unfortunate. But, and then Lori, the little girl, played by Cynthia, gets kidnapped. And that's when you start to get into some crazy things. I mean, the two guys start to suspect each other briefly, or, well, I should say Franciscus suspects Malden of doing something kind of iffy when they went to investigate this mausoleum. And then she gets kidnapped. And then, of course, we realize that Malden has a cane. And, of course, at the end, it pops out and it's a blade. And he stabbed and wounded the kidnapper. But, of course, couldn't see him because he's blind. I mean, so this is kind of like hitting Zatoichi level. I mean, he's not doing martial arts, but it's in that Zatoichi Daredevil kind of blind seer kind of thing, which I really groove on. It's nice to see Malden playing a character in that proud lineage. So, they go to rescue Lori, and they find out the killer, and they also find out some really bad news about Lori. And the film ends in a way that when I first saw it, I was convinced something happened that was really kind of shocking and sad to one of the characters, the lead characters here. And it's weird because then a friend of mine explained it to me, and he said, no, listen to the end, listen to the voiceover before we get into the closing credits, or as we're getting into the closing credits, and you'll realize that the kidnapper, murderer, psycho, whatever, uh, was bluffing about some of his claims. And if you've seen the movie, of course, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'm going to keep it kind of ambiguous, so as it can be a surprise. I won't lay the big spoiler on you. Um, but the thing is, it's different than I thought it was. And so each time I watch it, I keep that in mind. And then on one of the bonus features on this Blu-ray, they explained that there was actually a longer ending, which had more exposition, I guess, that explained, the Turtsy thing and the killer. Um, but like I said, the killer is secondary anyway. It's not what the killer does throughout the film. It's what the killer does by kidnapping Lori, because he's trying to eliminate these guys, or blackmail, or whatever he can do to these guys who he knows are onto him, even though they're kind of like amateur sleuths. Um, so you know, there was more exposition, and I think there was more of a hint, or more of an overt um, explanation for the ending. So it wouldn't have been ambiguous the way I saw it the very first time I saw it. But Argento cut that out. I'm not sure if they shot it or not. I'm sure it says on here where they actually shot any of it. I can't remember. I don't recall any footage, but I can't remember exactly. Um, if you know, tell me in the comments below, please. I need comments. So um, yeah, it's a masterpiece. It's my favorite Giallo. It's my favorite Argento, and I appreciate you letting me drone on and on about it. I've tried to analyze it from my point of view, and put it in some context with Argento and with art in general. And I got to say that it's a memorable movie to me, and one of my most cherished memories of seeing it is uh, towards Halloween, about 3 years ago. It was before they got into the late night hardcore, into the horror films, but they were playing a lot of thrillers on TCM and some Hitchcock and things. And on a Friday afternoon, like no later than 2 p.m., uh, they played the full uncut bird, the crystal plumage, on TCM. And that was incredible. And that's the only time I'm sure you would ever see an Argento movie at that time of day, at that day of the week on that channel. And I guess that's because it's just so damn commercial, and such a sellout. Anyway, thanks a lot. I appreciate everything, and I'll talk to you soon with another underrated thriller.